everyone. This will be the final lecture for the day and probably for the session as well for us before we move into our group discussion. Then tomorrow we'll have our presentations. Part of planning, very important thing that now we know what are the different components, what are the different loads we can put upon our athletes to get a certain adaptation. Now what is important for us is to identify what are some of the means and methods that we will have. Methods will pretty much be talking about continuous method. We're talking about interval method, we're using repetition method. So methods means which form of training you're going to use. Means, on the other hand, is what type of means am I using? Am I using weight plates? Am I using weighted jacket? Am I using body weight? Am I going to use what we call uphill runs? So these are some of the means that we're going to use as part of our training. Okay, remember training is about you putting a few means in a particular method, and then to see whether that stimulus is productive for our athlete. Part of the reason why we have to understand these means and methods, because it also gives you whether that particular athlete is able to have a good relationship in that stimulus to the body and able to perform or increase in its performance or development to help us to go on creating what I call a template. So in order to do that, it's good to understand a few things as we are progressing. One of the first things that we always want to know is how do we structure our session? Okay, I think I will not touch too much on the overall microcycle or macro cycle. I think we have done that before in our level 1. So there's a macro cycle, which is a year plan or probably a composition of preparation and specific, preparation and competition as one. So that will become a macro cycle. From there, the trickle-down effect will be you will have what we call mesocycle. Then we have a microcycle, and then within a microcycle, we'll have sessions, and of course, units will be part of that. So this is how a structure will look like. So today we are talking about particularly to a session. Session means something that we do in one day or in one so-called period. Okay, sessions sometimes in senior level, it could be having a morning session, you could have having an afternoon session. But generally for youth, is always predominantly work with one session because of they going to school, coming back from what I call school-based activities. So they will predominantly be doing a single session work. So how do we structure this single session? It's important for us. Always we are working in what we call in the level of fatigue. When you're designing our program, like you mentioned earlier, Parveer, why some sessions you have to be fresh in order to perform that particular biomotor abilities, and some of it you can actually have a certain level of fatigue in the system, and you can still perform well due to the intensity that's required. In that notion, of course, coordination and technique will take the what I call the top notch or the most important aspect of it of the session planning. So whenever you do session planning, coordination and technique will become the first area that we want to introduce. Reason being is definitely to address the opportunity for the nervous system to be able to be taxed upon, and of course also to have the opportunity to rely on. Then we will move into what we call the more speed strength, neuromuscular maximum strength trainings. Okay, what will be the difference between, for example, neuromuscular maximal strength, and later on you will see what we call the strength endurance. Okay, neuromuscular maximum strength slightly is emphasized here because of the requirement for the body to use the nervous system. Speed strength and speed, we just spoke about, again, central nervous system related, and also quite demanding in terms of the musculoskeletal explosion requirement for them to do. So because of that, this will take a second. And next to it, of course, now we move into the endurance aspect of both speed and strength. Again, mentioned earlier, the importance of knowing that speed endurance is the ability to um, endure or sustain coordination of speed of contraction. And of course, strength endurance, on the other half, is ability to maximize force or utilize force for a longer duration. So this will be the next in line in terms of preparation. Then we move into what we call a general conditioning. Okay, this general conditioning is predominantly physical conditioning, our body's general physical conditioning that we'll use. And of course, to end off would be what we call general endurance. So if I'm going to plan my sessions, this is the order that I will look for. One another thing that you can use this profile is you can also go across. It means if I'm doing it as a session preparation, I can do this way. If I want to do a microcycle preparation, I can also go in that direction. That means I'm combining two components together as one day, and then when I move to the second day, I'm completely changing the events need, so I can go into a conditioning or general endurance following day. So again, look at not only just from the vertical perspective of this, you can also look at it from a horizontal perspective. So what we do when we are about to plan, always, we will always set the overall goal and objective. This is how we want to ensure it fits into the bigger picture of the microcycle and the period of training. Why is it very important? Because each unit in combination will create a session. A session in combination will create microcycle, okay, and the microcycle in combinations create a mesocycle. Every mesocycle will have a goal to achieve, either to develop strength, to develop speed strength, or to develop speed. So when we have such focus, each of it has to have a particular goal that we want to achieve before we kind of set out to plan the details of it. And of course, when we also need to know how and what type of skill and biomotor energy systems we want to develop to enable the final outcome. So again, always have a bigger picture. We remember we talk about when you want to develop the skills, we need to have the different orientation towards skill, slow to fast, easy to complex, loaded to unloaded kind of things. So these are some of the things that we want to have as a specific objective. Then mentioned by Ms. Parvez, some of the principles for effective planning sessions we need to look into and to ensure they follow through course. And then, of course, finally, we design activities in order to achieve these goals. So it's always important to write it down or always pen it down somewhere, the first 3 steps before we actually start writing plans. Some of the things that I always encourage new coaches or beginning coaches is to have a small, either box-like platform where you can actually write on top for each mesocycle what I need to do, and then how is it going to help me to prepare my sessions for in microcycle. So this will help you to guide the planning process so that you become familiar and not to be again diverted away from what is the plan of the particular phase. When we are planning several units or many units, more than one unit, we need to keep this thing is in line. One, always start with the neuromuscular training first. So these are basically coordination, technique, speed strength, and neuromuscular maximal strength. Always comes before energy production. Okay, so if you take in terms of our systems that we shared earlier, always anything that's related to neuromuscular platform, whereas eye neural system load will always come before energy related, more in terms of the physiological aspect of it, metabolic conditioning, if you want to call that. So endurance, aerobic, anaerobic, alactic, lactate, and even hypertrophy part of that will come through. So how do we organize a session? The sessions are pretty much done by dynamic warm-up. Okay, warm-up is always a main routine. So what's the purpose of a warm-up? Can somebody tell me? Recall work?
You can prepare your body for the upcoming event, your sessions, your training.
Okay, so to prepare for the upcoming
Generate the
sessions.
heat.
Say again, Sahana?
Generate heat.
Build speed, okay. Again, it's depending on what we call the warm-up session. It's always to prepare the body. Okay, that's what you all mentioned. We use various methods. We will use active dynamic warm-up. Of course, we also use event-specific or event-related drills to help to prepare the bodies as well. Okay, and then of course, once the body is ready to go, we will move into the quick, what we call briefing. Okay, the briefing is something what I call is important to set as a criteria for many young coaches. It is to give a clear objective of what's the purpose for the training. Why is it important? Because it is to orientate the learning. Okay, as part of teaching, because remember, early stage for us is always about teaching and trying to put a certain level of what we call discipline in our youth. Is also to give a clear indication. Okay, what's the objective of the day? 1 to 3 is the maximum objective we want to achieve, and in that, how the sessions will be like. So again, it's very good to give short, brief, precise objective to help athlete prepare for the session. Then we move into what we call the technical and skills unit, and this is where when you put in your what we coaching eye into action to allow you to prepare and address some of these skills and technique development to take place. From there, we move into what we call fitness unit, general fitness unit. Could be body weight related, could be implement used, and it can even be what we call a change of location. Sometimes you can bring them into a fitness center, or you have a bicycle or a swimming pool. So again, conditioning could be done not just always has to be in the same environment, but could be, if it's nearby, you can always rotate the conditioning aspect of it. Recovery as part of the details that we need to have, and then we cool down. Okay, usually in the recovery phase and during the cool down phase, what we do is we'll normally give a debriefing again to share what is objective today, and then have we met the objective, how well have we met the objective. Why is it important? It's important especially for youth athletes because they're beginning to form again, when we talk about motivation, talking about aspirations. So all this is important to cultivate as part of a good session, and to have a short debrief to let them know how the session went, what have the athlete have achieved, and what they can look forward to the following day or the following session. And then with that, we end with cool down. So this is pretty much the organization of a training session. So for the sections to be effective, it has to be linked, like I mentioned earlier, with other sessions to make it as a whole and lead to a significant and stable progress. Always it's important. We are talking about long-term athletes development. So again, it's not a hurried process. It should be a stable, gradual process that we want to have. So this will create what we call a significant and stable upward trend of development that we want to have through our session planning. And of course, the combination of sessions we mentioned earlier is what we call microcycle, and traditionally it's called it will last about 7 days. definitely you will have a different routine. So 7 days could be in relation to our school orientation or work days related. History behind it is due to the orientation of how number of weeks is set. So that is where it is worked out. Definitely when you go in a higher platform, since when you get older, you're able to put together microcycles can vary anywhere between 6 to 9 days. On a long or multi-event discipline, it can even go up to 14 days. So again, microcycle can vary based on the events need. So with that, just to give you that brief understanding of training session and microcycle, now we go into what we call a little bit more detail in some of these needs and methods that we can use for our training. So we start with a general process. This is where many of you would have seen this. This is just a recap for some of you guys. So we start with what we call general component, where we're creating the general body development, general physical conditioning. We can do circuit training. We can do Oregon circuit, which I mentioned before, and of course, pelvic stability, stabilization, and balance work. So some of the means that you can see that is available for you, for us to use, will be V stands for volume. So let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, V is stands for volume, I stands for intensity, R stands for recovery rest. So here you can see that this is taking place 3 to 4 sets, 7 repetitions of 30 seconds with 30 seconds recovery. Intensity could be fairly high, okay, and there's no recovery. Some of the muscle group that you can look for is arm, legs, working on the agonist muscles, trunks as well. And then, of course, arms, legs, and trunks, we work the antagonist muscle, or even can bring in the whole body. So some of these things are, again, part of planning. You can have a specific area, body parts to use. And then, of course, you can combine and mix. Where does it predominantly work on? Strength and endurance aspect of it. That's where it's a general conditioning and general endurance. So this is where I can use this activity. Oregon circuit, again, it is more for, again, the variation you have for sprinters and middle distance runners. 30 seconds of prime movers. Say, how many of you know where are the prime movers? What are the prime movers we have in our body? Sample of prime movers you're familiar with?
The bigger muscle, sir?
Yeah, bigger muscle groups. So what are the ones we have? Example of prime movers.
Like a glute muscle, I think.
Okay, glute muscle. Okay, you have any other big muscles we have in our body?
Quads.
Quads. You have
Hamstring.
hamstrings. Okay, and then
Calves.
probably
Abdomen.
pectorals. Okay, so any prime movers that we want, we use them as part of the program. So rather than designing something in terms of exercise, we want to focus on this to give a general conditioning aspect of it, but also to have a little bit of specificity in it. So here you can see volume. It is done 8 times. Okay, 30 seconds, prime movers, plus running. Okay, Oregon circuit, it always combines activity with movement. Okay, what I mean by activity with movement means activity means these are stationary activities you do. Maybe let's say you do lunges or drop lunges, and then follow up by a 60 meters build up. So that is how Oregon circuits are meant for. Okay, so intensity you can see here is called striding. So basically that's the intensity. Rest, there's no. In terms of set rest, it's about 3 minutes. Middle distance guys, on the other hand, you have 15 repetitions of 1 minute. Again, prime mover. But again, what you can see here, instead of running a short 60 meters, you're actually running 400 meters. So again, it could be at 110% of VCR. with no recovery, and you have what we call set rest of 3 minutes. So this could be very event specific prime mover development or strength improvement, and also can be general endurance. Stability, predominantly hips, anything that's related to stability, muscle related, ankle joints, knee joints, hip, all these are again could be part of stabilization and balance requirement. You can always use them as an activity to identify them and to train both the agonist and endogenous. Intensity, it should be ideally 1:1 ratio. That means the stress level should be almost similar. So some of the examples you can have is to improve or have a improve in terms of running strides efficiency, pelvic stabilization, and of course also into general endurance. So this is how it can support this area. We talk about a little bit on flexibility now. PNF, for many of you are familiar, what is PNF? Anybody have heard before? The term PNF?
Prime neuromuscular facilitation.
Okay, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation.
Facilitation.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Okay, so basically what happens is you will get into a, let's say if I want to do that exercise for my quadriceps. Okay, so what will happen if, not quadriceps, a hamstring. So I lie down with my legs up in the air, somebody's holding the legs. And then what is going to happen while the person is sort of resisting the person's leg on top, that individual will try to push his legs downwards using the hamstring and probably even the glutes muscle downwards. When you do that, what happens to the muscle? It will generally, from a tight position, it kind of stretches itself and opens up. When that happens, the range of motion increases, so I can move the so-called leg limb in terms of few degrees forward or towards the athlete. So again, we continue doing it until to the point where it is no longer possible or comfortable. Again, this is going to be also a strength-related activity, but predominantly it is to improve what we call flexibility. The other one that we use a bit more is called crack. Have you heard about this word before, crack? Anybody have heard of this word before? Crack? C-R-A-C? Okay, CRAC is actually an acronym for contract, relax, endogenous contraction. Okay, contract, relax, endogenous contraction. So that is basically what it means. So it is very similar character in nature of PNF, but one added what I call a element to it. So we mentioned earlier about athletes trying to so-called resist that what I call a resistance for the hamstrings as they push. So again, the muscles opens up. Now what happens is before we move forward with the athlete's leg, the athlete does what we call the quadricep contraction. So the athletes try to contract the quadriceps while the assistance pushes forward. So this way, the flexibility is enhanced. This is also one of the ways sometimes we use during competitions or preparation for competitions to help athletes to improve what I call the warm-up, their preparation for events. Okay, so that is basically correct. So these are the two things that is predominantly we use. Of course, we have ballistic movements, again, static stretches, but in general development, we want to have them to improve flexibility in these two ways. Then we move on to intensive interval training, anywhere from acceleration all the way up to what we call speed endurance. Again, when we're doing intensive interval training, effort is maximum. Again, the rest is 3 minutes for per repetition, 7 minutes for the set recovery. Flying 40 meters or 40 meters run with flying 30, float 30, or ease off 30. So we can do that as part of preparation. Third one, again, you do 3 times 150. So 3 to 4 times of 150 meters, very high intensity, rest 15 minutes. So this element we have covered earlier in terms of how the rest works. When we come to event-specific endurance, where you do 500, 700, 300, let's say it's an event-specific for 1,005. Intensity will be race pace. You work between rest will be 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. And then, of course, if I'm doing in sets, it will be slightly longer. I will take a 30-minute break because it's a very high demand activity. On the other, so-called in the shorter version, okay, where we have the break, we have 5 times 300 intensity race pace, and we go for 2 minutes recovery. This is the event-specific endurance development where we talk about, where I can do the first one longer, second one shorter. So that way, the whole volume are still revolving around my event. Extensive interval training will be predominantly towards VCR pace related or endurance related. So again, 10 times 1,000 meters, 110% of VCR with 3 minutes recovery is a general endurance, predominantly aerobic and glycolytic adaptation of utilization of energy. Continuous run, we mentioned as a method, this continuous run. Again, 45 minutes, anywhere between 85 to 90% VCR, pulse rate to be around 150. Okay, no rest, general development. Fartlek, or we call it tempo variation runs that we can use. Again, intensity can be decided by athletes, recovery also decided by athletes. So the beauty of tempo or fartlek, it is athletes driven, or it could be pre-designed for the athlete to make use of. Coordination is part of changing pace, okay, needing to accelerate to run faster and then to relax a little bit. It will be predominantly endurance, but strength related. So again, here is where you can see the word becoming evident. No more longer strength endurance, is enduring strength. Okay, so again, this is the other option of working the endurance part of it. Very useful, especially for general endurance, event-specific endurance, and speed endurance. So this is where you can have this element as part of that development or part of that adaptation you're looking for. Ins and outs predominantly used for speed base, okay, going in, relaxing, attacking, relaxing. So here you can see the example of 3 to 5 repetition over 60 meters, but the 60 meters are broken up into 20, 20, 20. So again, 20 meters of relax, 20 minutes of fast, 20 minutes of relax. So again, in out means it's basically acceleration, hold, acceleration, hold. So that's how it works. So predominantly speed related works around acceleration as the component. Heel run varies again based on the event needs. Shorter distances like 20 meters focus more on the frequency aspect of it. The longer runs will of course work towards the endurance strength of it. Here you can see duration of a middle distance competition can be used. Again, on uphill, if you can find a good long hill, or optional can be using what we call the treadmill. Okay, if you have a treadmill, you can use it and let the athlete run a middle distance event in that gradient. Okay, again, effort wise will be maximum 45 seconds to near complete. Strength training weights, again, focusing on high quantity. We have shared about the intensities, 90 to 100%. If I were to move down to 70 to 75%, is more hypertrophy related. 60% will be more strength endurance related. So this is how the flow can take place from sets to absolute rep numbers. So again, when it's required, when the effort has to be high, you break it out into smaller sets. But when there's an opportunity to do as an endurance, we can do it as a bigger volume of the work. Like 4 times 20 is considered as strength endurance, but the repetitions is doing it 20 times as compared to 3 repetitions. But I'm doing it 1 to 3 times over a small quantity. Plyometrics, on the other hand, could be boundings, could be, example here, you see jog, bound jog, could be option. Again, or dropping from, not dropping, sorry, hurdle hops could be part of that. Okay, here you can also see 30 to 40 meters bounding, effort maximum, rest 4 minutes. So all focusing on short ground contact. So this is neuromuscular coordination related. Also focuses on speed strength, stretch shortening cycle. Okay, SSC as in short form. Resistant runs, strength endurance, and then of course assistant runs is more on a frequency and acceleration. So most of the times resistance runs, we will use it towards what we call a preparation of force application. Assisted run is more for speed developments. Okay, technical drills, again, can be very event specific. So again, duration, ABCs, our jump, run, jump, throw, ABCs can be used. So-called deep water running, DWR, deep water running. It is again semi-specific training, time-based, frequency of knee lifting or knee utilization or movement of the knees. Specific to adaptation. So how well can you do? Again, frequencies can be utilized here because of the need to move the legs as fast as possible in water. It's always going to be for frequency related. Predominantly what we call works towards endurance events. General endurance, speed endurance, and of course event-specific endurance you can use that. Some examples you can have when athletes recovering from injuries and still need to be preparing for competitions, deep water running, bicycling, and even rowing can be used to provoke that level of what I call intensity. So this is where you can make use of the few either deep water running, bicycle, or even rowing to your use. These are all non-structural based loading. Now we move to specifics for events. Starts, of course, we work shorter distances, volume, 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. Maximum, usually whenever we do workout, it always will be speed related, will be maximum. Focuses on start, reaction, and acceleration. For hurdles, of course, crossing over 2 hurdles or 3 to 5 hurdles, but in a shorter duration or shorter distance, focusing on frequency and learning to run faster. So again, focusing on the ground contact and keeping the speed execution high. Relays, incoming approximately 50 to 60 meters, outgoing about until 5 meters after the takeoff zone. So again, it's also going to be a very high speed coordination related, visual, again, reaction and all that will come into picture. So that will be part of that. High speed running, on here it's what we call flying 50 meters, basically 30 meters acceleration with 50 meters high speed turnover runs where you can put in. So it's a combination of acceleration transiting into maximum speed. 22, it's more on delta lactate. That means basically it is the activation of change in lactate. That means the body's ability to produce lactate. So we use very high speed, but you look at the volume, actually it's rather low, 3 times only, to about 120 meters. That is more than enough to provoke the lactic production needed for development. Technical runs, again, improving the technical element of high speed. And of course, multiple throws are important for general strength, general speed strength, but also more of a coordination version of the strength development. Jumps, predominantly coordination runs and approach for development of elements of the approach that you want to have, increasing the stride length and stride frequency in the runway. For approach, again, you have anywhere between full run, okay? And of course, we will try to mix that here. Approach runs can be predominantly identified as full, but you can also have medium and short approach as well. So you can use the one below, you can use that for medium and high, where the objective is to raise the targeted speed to a maximum achievable optimal level before we can do a takeoff. So this is how you can actually do approach runs. For curve runs, basically it's for our jumpers, high jumpers, combining the buildup of speed into takeoff. So again, specific control of speed, we mentioned earlier by Parveer, about optimal control speed that you can achieve or needed to do that performance. Pole runs, the using of pole, again, it is event-specific preparation, again, to manage the pole with appropriate speed to ensure that the speed of takeoff is managed. So all except for the approach, which is high, I mean, we're almost talking about 80 to 95%. Curve runs and pole runs, usually you do it from medium to high intensity. Okay, so here comes the other versions. Okay, again, for jumps, the full approach, usually we prefer to use it in a competition specific, where we can develop everything across the adaptation to the technique, to the runway, to the board, as coordination, development of specific strength and speed. And of course, a certain amount of endurance will be needed for the number of times the athlete have to wait before they go back in again for the next effort. So that also can help out. Jumps with reduced approach, medium to high. Again, it is to utilize or combine elements of takeoff, adding speed to the approach, and then to maximize the what I call specific strength part of it. General takeoff drills, again, these are all utilization of what we call imitation drills, where we do from short to medium run-ups, anywhere between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps in between takeoffs. So again, short, quick attacks to provide the utilization of what we call imitation drills to bring the technique into action. Gymnastics, again, more towards what I call a development of the feeling of the swing or the momentum. So predominantly towards pole vault to help athletes to develop the coordination, mobility, endurance, and of course the strength aspect of it. Specific technique exercises, develop discipline specifics, anything that improves the technique element and sequencing. That means we break the whole part of teaching, and then we are working with them. So this is how this will be can plan using that. Throws, again, competition implements. So using the actual competition implements, very high intensity. We're throwing about 15 to 20 throws. Again, rest should be about 60 to 90 seconds between throws. So this is to help to fine-tune coordination and sequential throwing. Heavier implements are more specific strength related, again, and to improve what we call the acceleration aspect of it. Lighter implements, on the other hand, is to improve throwing rhythm at higher speed, enhancing this intramuscular coordination that is required for speed, and also develop speed strength for throwing. General throwing is just normally used for general timing between the body, lower body and upper body. So again, to have a good coordination that we talk about, movement coupling that we wanted to achieve. Okay, of course, also develops work capacity to handle higher throwing volume within a session. So work capacity is slightly different from endurance. So work capacity here means the ability of the athlete to handle volume of a slightly higher intensity as well. So again, the other elements of coordination, strength, and speed has to come into picture to make sure that the work capacity improves. Jumps is also a good form to maintain for throwers to manage and go through the thing. Speed, we have seen many of you have written sprints as part of throwers' staple of picking up what we call the conversion of horizontal speed, and technique imitations, where we use the different forms of the whole part whole series again to improve the coordination of proper movement sequence and to improve the intramuscular coordination. Distance running, steeplechase, continuous runs, regeneration runs, long slow distance. I think these are pretty much covered during our endurance topics, so I will not go too deep in it. Five-pace theory or five-pace runs is where you're moving from varying speeds of velocity, but in a shorter segment of 30 meters. So every 30 meters, the speed is changing. So this is to create what we call the neuronal variability. For steeplechase, of course, there are various ways of clearing. We have the barrier skimming, water jump, and even the clearance that we have used before in our level 1 teaching progressions. Over distance and under distance, for this will be part of event group development or event specific endurance. Competition stimulus, exactly. Again, creating volume of 1005 with 5 times 300 meters. Again, competition race pace, short recoveries, is to introduce both event-specific endurance and tactics. Skiing, rollers, again, is to take away what we call not predominantly in a local setting, but you can also use them. Now we have roller skates that we can use them to help to improve some of this general endurance for the arms and the legs. Of course, last one is the VCR test, crosswind, and stride length test that you can use for stability. Okay, so with that, what is important for us to know is optimal training is part and is important to avoid over or underload. Okay, remember we're talking about having good preparation for stimulus development. Always overloading will lead to what we call burnout. Underloading will also means we get into a level where the optimal adaptation doesn't take place. So this is what we want to avoid. So we need to keep track of how performance can be developed. Observe level of fatigue. This is where we mentioned looking at a pale face, again lips, the color change. Again, what we also do is to check for pulse rate. Sometimes even hydration level can be looked in terms of the color of the urine. All this also can help in terms of fatigue. Number of hours of sleep also can be involved, and of course appetite. That means the athlete's appetite to eat food can also be observed to regulate the level of fatigue. Of course, whenever we do our training, it's always about quality. So here, skill, speed, and speed strength will be what we want to focus on, especially when our event requires such a high level of what we call execution of skill. And always remember, as coach, though I have draft out the plan methodically and patiently, always be ready to change. Be able to change and willing to change is a very good, what I call a behavior or trait of coaches, because ultimately it's the athlete that we're trying to train, and they need to improve based on their recovery need from the different training loads they're going to go through. Okay. With that, okay, we come to an end. Okay, any questions? Okay, Sahana, I've asked whether it's 7 days or 9 days. Again, like I mentioned, it is will be depending on our athletes' ability to utilize. Again, in some places we have a routine 7 days. Some places we are able to utilize 9 days. So again, it will be dependent on how you can cooperate and work with your athlete that can be moved from the 7 days and 9 days program.
For youth athlete,
Mhm.
for youth athlete, 7 days.
Yeah, because youth athlete predominantly we work around 7 days because of let's keep in mind the routine of school, routine with family and all that will come into the influence of planning. So this is why I always mention when we are planning, there are few factors that we will keep in mind as the athlete matures and athletes move into the direction of taking the sport more seriously, and there's an opportunity to bring the athlete to a higher level of performance, then of course my routine will change, my microcycle planning will change. So again, it is always will be athletes related, motivation related.
So excuse me.
5-pace running, you describe. Okay, Azahari, is it? Okay, Azahari, okay, give me a minute. Ajit, I will answer your question. Let me answer the one in the chat, and then I'll come to you. Okay, so keep the question there. So 5-pace, basically, it is somewhere between running from, let's say, remember we talk about if I'm going to running 1,005 as my event, then the 5-pace that will help me is 800, 400 as under distance, and as over distance, I'm running 5,000, 10,000. So this is what I mean by the 5-pace running. So again, taking your event, you drop 2 pace or 2 distances down, and you take 2 distances up, so that it becomes a 5-pace. Yes, Ajit.
Sir, I am Ajit, Sri Lanka.
Yes.
My language is normally English.
No problem. Take your time. Let me know. What do you want to know?
Weight training, maximum strength, speed in strength, hypertrophy, one by one exercise counter.
Yes. So if you're asking in terms of repetitions, if I let's say if I'm going to leave for hypertrophy, let's say we're working around 80%. Okay, yes. 80%. Then if I'm lifting, example, 80% of body weight, if I'm 100 kilo, okay, 80% will be 80 kilo. So example, so I'm lifting, so I'll count 3. So when I finish 3, I have done 3 times 80. That means I move the weight 3 times. Yes. So that's the volume. So how many sets am I doing? That becomes the total. So if I'm lifting it, let's say for another 2 more times, so it is 3 times 80. So which will be number wise, how much is it?
Total exercise. Example, maximum strength. Total exercise 3.
Maximum exercise for a total in terms of what do you call maximum speed or maximum, we'll go for 1 to 3 repetitions. Yes. Maybe depending on the athlete's training age. So this I'm talking about a bit more higher training age. We'll move to even 2 to 3 times or 2 to 3 sets of 1 to 3 repetitions of maximum.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So there's a new thing that coming up right now for developing athletes. We can focus a little bit more on hypertrophy. Reason being is to develop the physical capacity of athletes. And another one we're looking at is isometric trainings. So again, to improve tendon strength for athletes at younger age, to allow them to improve that part of it. So there's another area we can look in. So it's not overcoming the traditional lifting of overweights, but is to more of building muscles a little bit to help athletes to grow and also to improve tendon strength.
I like, sir, practically session.
Oh, practical session, yeah. So next time when we have opportunity to meet, we'll do a lot more practical session. I think, yeah, I know where you're coming from. Sometimes we have too much of theory, but we want to do the practical sessions. Hopefully in future we have something where we can meet face to face, and then we can work on something like that. Sure. Looking forward to it.
One more question in
Yes.
chat.
Yeah, I answered already. Azhar. Yeah. Okay. Okay, one more.
Yeah.
What exercise are appropriate for non-explosive athlete? What exercise are appropriate? Any body weight exercises, anything that requires the movement, again, to develop the athlete's overall condition can be used. So for if I say non-explosive athletes, I'm talking about moving into endurance. So endurance aspect of it, we want to have whole body movement a lot more. We will not require to do specifics. But as I mentioned, again, it's also important to develop a certain level of hypertrophy for the athletes to allow the development of strength to take place. And then, of course, we move straight away into speed strength activities like power and that. So again, predominantly, you can start with bodyweight exercises, and then resistant band exercises could also be used before you move into other areas.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So this one, Bhutan.
Uh-huh.
So what's the effect of short-term high-intensity interval training?
So again, what's the effect of?
Yeah, the short-term high-intensity interval training.
Okay, high-intensity interval training, we have to be cautious when and how much I'm using. Okay, remember we talk about mitochondria as our powerhouse, our the energy source that we want. Through general conditioning or general training, we increase the mitochondria. And of course, when we move to getting the, what you call the output, the power output from it, we want to ensure we don't want to deplete. Okay, studies have shown that introduction of lactate or lactate, not as in lactate system, but introduction of hydrogen ions to the lactic acid that we are familiar or we know, kind of destroys the mitochondria in the body. So again, that means the aerobic aspect of our system drops. So if I'm going to do too many of high intensity interval training, it disrupts this impairment. So for our distance where it is important to have endurance as part of our contribution. And we saw during our 400 meters where it is 43% anaerobic, 45% aerobic contribution. Already we know that we cannot do too many interval or intensity interval training too often. Aim is to do a couple of it, preferably in a competition, to provoke the anaerobic system and then go and compete for the main one. So that is something I think we are trying to advocate as well in World Athletics.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, if not, what I'll do right now, I'll show you a short expectations of the discussion, and then we can move into the various groups already.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon. You got a
This is
question?
Regine from Philippines.
Yes.
I just want to ask if are young athletes allowed to do weight training?
Young athletes are allowed to do weight training. Yes. Okay. When I
13 to 18 years old.
Okay, we work in relation to learning the technique of lifting is important. That's something which we want to advocate. Lifting of strength comes in, remember we talk about our window of opportunity. The moment the athletes peak height, peak weight is established, you have a window of opportunity that opens up for strength development. Definitely you can start introducing strength. But again, we use body weight as part of that. So 30% of the body weight, 30 to 50% of the body weight can be used to help athletes to understand how to overcome load, not in terms of preparing them with maximum intensity lifting, but more towards what I call a overcoming strength with 30 to 50% of body weight. The other one that we will always also encourage is probably looking at isometric training as well. Isometric training will also be good. It's another form of increasing body's ability to exert maximum. So without even what I call lifting, you can get the athlete to lie down, okay, and then get their butts to lift off the ground. You have the heel and the shoulder blade touching on the floor, the butts off the ground. You straight away targeting the isometric training of the posterior chain. So this is also can be used. Wall squats. So some of these things can be utilized as part of strength development for younger athletes, rather than just purely going into the weight room to lift. Okay, the one could be on a later aspect of their training.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So if they already know how to do the weights, if they already know the proper form and techniques in doing weight training, what is the frequency or how often they should do the weight training in a week?
Normally, again, we will mix and match because now we're talking about structural load. So not to forget that is musculoskeletal loading that we're going to have. So 1 to 2 times a week, because we need to understand they have other loads that takes place into the body to technical work. Remember we're talking about at this age group, we are still experiencing different event groups. So again, 1 to 2 times a week could be safely put together as a part of training routines.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so I always use 1 to 2 where I want to introduce or as for maintenance, 2 to 3 as part of development. That means when you're developing an athlete's skill, a particular biomotor ability or focus, 2 to 3 times a week can be used. But for introduction, maintenance, you use 1 to 2 times a week. But this is for all biomotor abilities, not just for strength.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move into our actual work today. So what's going to happen for our groups? So we already have identified your groups already. Group 1 will be jumps, group 2 will be throws, 3 will be middle long distance, 4 will be sprints and hurdles. So this is what we will be planning to do. So in your groups, you will be coming up with the following focus. So group 1, jumps group, you will do general preparation phase for athletes in the event group development stage. Group 2, throws, specific preparation phase for groups or athletes who are in the specialization stage. Middle long distance group, you will focus on event group development on general phase or general preparation phase. Group 4 will be sprints and hurdles. You'll be focusing on specific preparation phase in specialization. Okay, so what we mean by this? Okay, we have this as our guidelines. So event group development, so at least will fall between the age of 13 to 15. Okay, so what we want to see a variety of activities, neuromuscular variations. Some of the examples are here for you guys to use. So again, is to prepare based on the guidelines we have here for you guys. Event specialization or specialization group. Okay, you will move what we call, you have different two phases. Phase 1, where you're 15 to 16 years old, UN group specialization, speed and technique orientation focus. On phase 2, 17 to 18, you're going into what we call fine models of technique. So again, I leave this part for those of you going to do specialization stage, whether you're going to focus on phase 1 or phase 2, we leave it to you guys. But again, what we want to see is there should be a variety of activities, neuronal variability, and always should have at least 2 events as part of focus for development. Okay, some guidelines you can have, again, to help you to dissect, but this one is not to use for the sessions here, but it's more for you all to use as you move on. So again, starting from chronological age, maturation, biological age, when you tick each boxes, it sort of gives you a guidance to what type of what you call periodization plan and which stage they are to guide your planning. Okay, and so here again, a simple graph to show how loads will change in terms of periods in relation to the development. Okay, these are just guides for you all to use it later on. I'll be sending you guys this shortly. Okay, any questions? I've already shared the template to use in our WhatsApp group. You all can use it. I see whether I can share them here as well from my computer. I see whether I can share them. Then you can use it, and then you can break away into your groups and to start discussing on the few things that we want to share. Okay, I'll be sharing the latest slides, so for you all to use for your group discussion. So give me a minute, let me save it. Okay, I've done that. I already sent it to our WhatsApp group. You can use it to download the informations, and then you can get them. So yeah, maybe Pak Dewi, or sorry, Pak Adi can help with the breakout rooms. Okay, try to, you can click onto the breakout rooms. So the icon is at the bottom of your chat below. You see there will be breakout rooms. You can join in. If you can click, if you find your names in the groups, you can straight away join in. If you don't need to wait for everybody to push you out.
Just click the room. Just get the name.
Oh,
Bentar, Ashar itu Ashar dia keluar masuk. Ashar 4. Ashar 4. Oke. Baik.
Muhammad Nabil ikut.
Nabil ikut. Nabil 4. Kita masukin.
Baliram Chaudhry.
Kenapa?
Baliram Chaudhry ikut.
Baliram ya, belum pernah ikut ya. Belum pernah ikut juga.
Edi, udah Edi.
Hah?
Edi sprint ya, Edi Sasmito.
Pak Edi, ya.
Ya, sprint.
Kenapa mental lagi ke sini? Oh enggak. Pak Edi sprint. Kenapa Muhammad Reza join? Oh, join. Oh, keluar ya. Entah.
Edi belum masuk Edi.
Tapi kenapa? Enggak.
Nggak datang sih Edi. Datang nggak?
Ada sih di sini, tapi di sini nggak ada. Kalau begini
Pak.
gimana? Kalau begini gimana Adi?
Yes.
Kalau dia nggak ada di room begini?
Ya, Mr. Reddy harus manual yang masuk. Klik Bigot Room. Kita udah masukin kok, Mbak.
Hah? Saya iya udah masuk ini. Pak Edi?
Ya.
Pak Edi belum masuk ke room ya?
Sudah ini.
Sudah di room 4.
Oh, tunggu.
Klik 4 Pak Edi. Pak Edi belum masuk soalnya.
Pak Edi belum masuk. Pak Edi klik sendiri 4. Klik apa? Di more. Ya, Di.
Di more.
Benar ya, Di?
Kalau kita
More,
masukin
yes, more.
nggak bisa ya? Hah?
Nggak bisa.
Kita klik nggak bisa ya?
Sudah di aksen ke sana, Pak.
Oh,
Ya, sekarang Pak Adi kalau mau masukin sendiri dari more kan? Dari mana? Oh, udah masuk tuh.
udah ya? Ya, udah. Siapa yang belum?
Masuk semua. Yang di dalam grupnya sudah masuk semua.
Udah masuk semua.
Pak, maaf, nggak ada kegiatan di YouTube ya. Saya stop ya.
Ya,
Ya.
stop aja.